Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be re-lent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a micro-lender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Okay, today I'm speaking to Dr. Emilio Justo, and he is a Cuban refugee, an eye surgeon, a two-time international TEDx speaker with the number 3 global TEDx of 2023 with over, get this, 9 million views, and the author of the book, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. Dr. Emilio, how are you?
Fantastic, Gerald. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show, and I greatly look forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, I am so intrigued by everything I read in your book and just the insights that you have. I love the way you write because it's very succinct but very deep. It's well researched, and I even like some of the neuroscience that you bring into the book because I'm a big neuroscience nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. But before we get into this conversation, I have 2 questions for you. I always ask my guests because,
Sure.
I'm a musician. And that is, what is your favorite style or genre of music?
Well, I'm proud to say, I know a lot of people are going to give me the dagger eyes, but I am a disco fanatic. Back in the 70s when disco was at its peak.
Yes.
And I would, that was back when I was in high school and then college. In college, I'd be going to the clubs, dancing every weekend. Of course, the girls love that, right? They always like guys who aren't scared to go out on the dance floor and aren't shy. And believe me, I was not shy. I'd go out there, I'd dance, enjoy the music. It's just so uplifting to me. Listening to disco music is just so uplifting. You can be in a funk, and within a split second, you're just on top of the world.
Yes. Music has a way of doing that to us, right? It has a way of doing that. And so let me ask you this. What is the piece of music or a song that really resonates and inspires you?
Well, there are so many, but just right off the top of my head, there's so many favorite musicians out there and groups and individuals. And one of my favorite singer-songwriters is Barry Manilow.
Okay.
Again, I'm not afraid to say that because I know people either love him or they hate him, but I've always loved him. And there's a song that he did, which is not one of his more well-known songs.
Okay.
It's called Daybreak. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
It goes, daybreak, you gotta believe it.
Yes.
Daybreak, And to me, I would listen to that song back in college, and again, it's just uplifting. I mean, it's not a disco song, but it's just such an uplifting, inspirational song. That's one that really comes to mind immediately.
Excellent, excellent. You know, when I ask people that, as they are looking up and reflecting, right? And usually they're looking to the right or looking to the left because they're remembering something from in their database. They start smiling when they do that. And you did the same thing as you were like, I asked you the question, you kind of looked up and you started smiling. And so there's a lot of other, probably even non-conscious memories that you have about what was going on in your life when that song came out that really allowed that song to get kind of connected to you in a very special way. So I always like to see that. And I thought that's really cool. So listen, obviously, you are a surgeon. You've done some amazing things, TEDx speaker twice, 9 million views on your TEDx. You're still performing surgeries and you're still writing. You got an awesome family. What has made you successful in your career? What do you think is that it factor, that thing that really helped you to become successful in your career?
Great question, Gerald. For me personally, as I have told other individuals and other hosts, I've been blessed in so many ways in this life, but I feel that internally, I've always had this innate sense of self-discipline. Since a young child and in high school, my parents never had to push me to study or do well. It just came naturally because I had that discipline that I wanted to do well.
Right.
So that's certainly at the top. But then hand in hand with that, I think the other concept is what I would call a resilience and a perseverance. I've had a couple of major crises in my life. In high school, my freshman year, I had a medical crisis where I was out of school for 2.5 months. I had 3 major surgeries, and it was cosmetically somewhat disfiguring. So I had, some emotional impact.
Yeah.
And I was still able to push through. I became valedictorian, even notwithstanding all of that. So that resilience, and then even in my professional career, I mean, I've been doing this now it's my 36th year in private practice.
Right.
But probably about halfway through, maybe in my 15th, 16th year of practice, I made some stupid choices whereby I abandoned my mantra of the whole delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And I tried instant gratification, an area, an arena that I didn't have familiarity with outside of medicine, and I completely failed. And my wife had been telling me all along, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, but I did it.
Yeah.
And it almost sent me to near bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
And I learned, a strong, powerful lesson. And with my wife's support, she kept preaching to me, look, life has dealt you some lemons right now, but it's up to you to make lemonade. And I took that seriously. And I clawed and dug my way out of that. And so the back half of my career has just thrived exponentially, for which I'm forever grateful, to those around me and to God. And so self-discipline and resilience and perseverance are really my mantras. And I think that's what's made me what others might call successful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love the idea that as you're being vulnerable, right? And you're sharing that, hey, I had some health issues. So that kind of woke me up to, life is short and I got to really make the most of every opportunity I have. And then to midlife, things are going great. And I go against my values. Right. And that happens to all of us, right? Where we do something and we have these values or we have these things that we said, this is who I am. And then in a moment, we go against it and we invest or we do something. And next thing you know, we find ourselves kind of out there on the ledge, right?
Yes.
And thank goodness for yourself. You had a wife of noble character that counseled you and helped you, pulled you back and didn't go, okay, dude, I'm just going to leave you out there. You didn't listen to me in the beginning, so I'm done, right? She didn't do that. She pulled you back. And so I'm sure you're grateful for that. But then you're able to, climb your way through it. And sometimes when we find ourselves in really difficult situations, we have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, or we have to make that decision that, no matter what, I'm going to make my way out of this situation. It's that process of coming out of it that we develop the muscle mentally, emotionally, physical, spiritually, to become the people that we later on in life actually can become and start doing some really cool things and leaving a legacy and making a difference.
Absolutely. And you summarized it beautifully, Gerald. I mean, it's precisely what happened. And again, I'm very blessed. My wife could have rubbed my face in it
Yep.
for years. And we still every now and again talk about it and think back. And she reminds me, because every once in a blue moon, I'll have a little inkling to do something different, like what I've been doing this last year, right? This last year, kind of, you mentioned the term legacy. And that's really been why I started a little over a year ago, maybe going on a year and a half ago
Yep.
almost, starting the TEDx journey, and then the book, which I had never done, and then my second TEDx. And so these were new things.
Yeah.
And my wife has kept me reined in. She says, "Oh, this is great that you're doing that. You're following your passion, but just, remember to not go off the deep end. Remember what
Exactly.
happened 20 years ago." And so she's keeping me reined in, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, she's giving me my own freedom of expression and
Yeah.
leaving a legacy for my family and our three children who are, still fairly young as teenagers. So it's a great part of life.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's jump into your book, The Power of Pause. And I love the title there, right? The Power of Pause, because that's where we get a chance to reflect and really think through what we're going to do before we make a decision, good or bad, if we pause. And I love the subtitle, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. So my first question is, in the world of instant gratification that we live in, right? TikTok,
Yeah.
Facebook, blah, 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 all these things. How does delayed gratification directly enhance a person's productivity in their personal and professional life? And talk a little bit more also about this concept of self-discipline. In that chapter, you talk about the art of achievement.
Right. Well, I think one of the understated things, at least in my view, I don't hear it talked about that much,
Right.
is the ability of pausing and being patient. In today's society, unlike when you and I were growing up, where I'm assuming we're kind of more or less the same
Yeah,
generation,
we are.
that that basically, we didn't have the instant gratification in terms of computers and social media and cell
No
phones.
microwave.
Right. So it was all the old fashioned way. And so now, as I'm trying to teach our children, and I'm not so sure they're listening that carefully, but I think when we pause and be patient and, digest what comes our way and think things through
Yeah.
before making rash decisions, it's basically resisting that temptation for that instant, immediate reward in the favor of building something later, which oftentimes is greater.
Yeah.
So that later, oftentimes greater reward, and that's really the power of delayed gratification. And I think it works in every aspect of life, whether it's productivity in the workplace instead
Yeah.
of wanting to get things done now.
Yeah.
It really pausing, and whether it's an individual at work or whether it's a group of individuals working together, but thinking things through, analyzing, and looking at the long-term goal, at the long-term objective, not just the short-term objective. And in the case of our personal lives, right, in my opinion, we need to focus on our own journey
Yeah.
rather than that destination, right? It's too easy to get caught up on thinking about the destination. Oh, we have to achieve this tomorrow. We have to be there tomorrow. No, let's focus on our journey and incremental milestones,
Yes.
and then celebrate those incremental milestones. As we achieve little pieces along the way, we should be able to rejoice and celebrate them to give us that inner reinforcement, that inner strength to continue to move forward.
I totally agree. And, when I think about what you're just saying there, it reminded me, because we both know Jack Canfield and have kind of had some time with him. And it is his concept in success principles, which is E equals R, well, E plus R equals O. And that's the event, then your response equals your outcome, right? And that we can't control the events, right? You're going outside, a tree falls. You go outside, and you get in your car to go around the corner to the grocery store, and someone runs a red light. We can't control the events of our life or things that happen on the outside, but we can control our response. And I love the title, The Power of Pause, because it is in that pausing before we respond that we can determine the outcome, whether it's for good or for bad, or that we decide to grow through it instead of just kind of barreling through it or just going through it, that we can, have a better outcome in our lives, no matter what the event is, because of how we choose to respond. And I see definitely the power in that.
I could not agree with any more, because by pausing and reflecting
Yep.
on what truly matters most to us and how we're going to achieve that, then we can determine thoughtfully,
Yep.
in a critical, thoughtful manner, how we're going to respond to that.
Right.
Because how many times, right, we've all been guilty of this, that we have a situation that comes up, and I'm particularly guilty of this. I'm the sort of person that sometimes I want to just react right away, whether it's reacting emotionally, and that initial reaction that we want to undertake quite often is the wrong reaction. And if we just pause and think it through, then we will digest it and then have a better response, which ultimately will, as you say, turn into a better outcome.
Yeah.
So patience is very understated, I think, in our world and our society. And I think patience is truly, when they say patience is a virtue,
it really is.
Mean it. I think it is a virtue.
It is. And I think, that, as someone listening right now, they may say, okay, well, when stuff happens, how do you prevent yourself from just reacting so quickly, or a knee-jerk reaction, right? And here's what I found, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is after my bout with vertigo, I think I shared this with you beforehand,
yes,
and I had lost the ability to walk before my TEDx talk and use music to rebuild my neurology and so on, and just started studying it. I would sometimes respond or react pretty quickly to certain things that would happen. But afterwards, because of that, I had to start practicing meditation and yoga, really working on de-stressing my body through my morning routine, if you will, writing out my goals. And I know you have that in your book as well, about writing out your goals. And what I found was, in practicing those habits, if you will, or attributes, that I found it easier that when an event happened or someone said something, or I got an email or a text that I'm like, oh, I need to respond to that or react to that, I go, wait a minute. I found it easier for me to delay and pause than just knee-jerk reaction. What are your thoughts on just building those types of habits to give you that capacity to be able to pause when something out of the blue comes in your way?
Yeah, yes, Gerald. And once again, you're absolutely correct. And they are habits that one needs to consciously, in my opinion, consciously make an effort to reinforce within ourselves, because we're all wired. I think as human beings, we're just innately wired to react. To something occurs and we want to react right away.
Right.
So that's human nature. But you have to train yourself to not react too quickly, not to speak too quickly. Right. That's one of the things I try and tell my kids, and even my wife. I say, hey, look, listen. The power of listening is far more powerful, in my opinion, than the power of speaking. Is you have to listen to what's being said, digest it, internalize it, pause, think about it, and then respond. And then you can it's your turn to speak.
Right.
But it's something that you have to consciously develop those habits over and over. Now, in my case, I don't think I shared with you that I'm an only child, because we came over as immigrants, as refugees. I was 3 years old. My parents didn't have anything financially. They didn't want to have a larger family and not be able to provide for them. So they made the conscious decision to just not have more children. And so being an only child kind of taught me, I'm good with my own quiet time, my own introspection. I don't need to have all this stuff going on around me. I don't need to have a wide circle of friends and parties and going out, I'm so comfortable just sitting in a room. Sometimes I'll even turn the lights off and I'll just sit on a recliner and I'll just close my eyes and kind of think about things.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that because that's how I was raised. I mean, I didn't have siblings to be talking to. So there were plenty of times when I was just in my own little world. And so I think that each of us, if we just take the time to pause and try and develop that habit,
Yeah.
that it really will make a huge impact in our lives as we move forward.
Yeah. And I'll say this, you don't have to be an only child to develop that habit. I was the youngest of 6, and I developed that habit because it was too much noise. So I would go to be by myself just to get away from the noise of my older siblings, but I was able to learn from them too. So, but yeah, we'll come back to your story as a 3-year-old, kind of going through what you went through. I thought that was a really interesting part of your book. So here's another question for you. And this gets around the idea of having clear long-term goals, right? And the idea of a lighthouse with with where you're going. Because many times, I think even with all the political things that are happening, not just even in the States, but just all over the world, all of the military things that are happening literally all over the world, we can be distracted and we can find it really difficult to have that self-discipline, and we can find ourselves overwhelmed, right? Just with the emotions of life. Not that we're going through something right now, but just the fact that the possibility of stuff going on creates stress in our lives. How can people cultivate a feeling of being whole when all of these things are going on if they have really clear long-term goals and they use this kind of model that you talk about in your book around this lighthouse?
I think establishing goals, and I do talk about writing them down whenever possible, and I'll be the first to admit that I've not always done that. I do that sporadically, and then I lose track, and then I go back to it. But when you have the goals, first, I would argue that when we set a long-term goal,
Yeah.
because I'm also going to talk about setting some short-term goals along the way. But when we set that long-term goal, one of the things that I find that most of us do not do, including myself, is that we don't set that long-term goal high enough. We don't set that bar high enough. We just set a goal that, we figure out we're going to achieve in 6 months or in a year or 2 years, and then we settle for that. But to me, that's just settling.
Yeah.
You don't want the goal to be so outrageous that you're just going to be totally frustrated because perhaps you'll never achieve it. But we do have to set lofty long-term goals. And then along the way, we have those smaller goals or those milestones, and then we chart our progress regularly along the way. And each time that we achieve something, we've got to be able to rejoice and celebrate. And what I mean by celebrate doesn't mean, oh, gee, I'm going to throw a party tonight.
Exactly.
But we just emotionally, we want to celebrate so that we can recharge ourselves to get to the next step.
Right.
So it is important to have those goals, and the more concrete that we can make them, the more specific, the better that they are, because it's too easy. And again, I've been guilty of this, where we just have these vague general goals, and the brain, for the brain to put it into the subconscious, I feel the brain has to have specific, concrete ideas of what it is that it's trying to achieve. So the more specific you can be, I think actually the easier it will be and the more efficient it will be to achieve them.
Yes, exactly. That really resonates with everything that I'm doing. And one of the reasons I started this podcast, right? And it was around the idea that as I went through my journey of overcoming, I developed some long-term goals and some short-term goals. And I met with a gentleman named Mike Rayburn, who's a speaker, plays guitar. He's played at Carnegie Hall 10 times and so on. But he also had been coached by Brian Tracy. And Brian told him, hey, if you really want to change your life, write down your goals as affirmations and write them out every day. And so he shared that piece of wisdom with me back in February of 2020. because I went out to Las Vegas to a workshop. And I'm kind of like you. I can't say I do it every day, but I probably do it more days on than not because it's become a habit of mine. And I love it as a morning part of my morning routine and meditation time. The goals start coming faster. I have a better and clearer understanding of where I'm going. And when challenges come up or those events happen in our life that can cause us angst and want to make us respond, I'm able to go, wait a minute, but this is where I'm going with my goal. This is where this event is going. Okay, I need to handle this way because it's really top of mind, right? And the other thing that I believe with goals, and especially long-term goals, is that the goal, the GOLD of the goal, GOAL, is who we become in the process of accomplishing that goal. And that's why it's so important to create a goal that's a little bit bigger than we are, that stretches us, because we will actually have to become a different person to accomplish that goal.
Yes, I love that. Yes, I fully agree. I absolutely love that analogy. We do have to have those lofty goals, and we need to be able to stretch ourselves.
Exactly.
And along this journey that I talked about earlier, as we're stretching for these goals, short and long term, that along the road, we're going to have failures, right? And we need to be in a mindset where we rejoice, believe it or not, we rejoice in having failures. Why? Because when we have those failures, it's going to teach us something. And
Yes.
hopefully we're going to learn from those failures. And that's going to then further accelerate our progress in the future. So we need to be able to embrace failures and not necessarily shy away from them. Now, obviously, we don't want to be creating failures that are going to be catastrophic, but having failures that just occur, that's okay. We should be good with that. And we need to learn from them. We need to see, okay, what happened? What can we do differently? What did I learn from this experience?
Right.
And that in turn is going to teach us how to move forward. And so that's part of having the goal setting, is embracing failures.
Exactly. Because the reality is that if you're not failing at something, you're not trying and you're not living.
That's right.
You're just playing it safe, and just kind of your life is boring, and you're just kind of going, and it's mundane. Because if you're trying something new, trust me, you're going to fail, right?
Yes.
But so then it's the mindset, because you do talk about, and I have this as one of the things I want to talk to you about as well, is that setbacks, obstacles, and challenges are to be leveraged and not to be regretted or not to be avoided, but they're to be leveraged, right? So you talk about that. Now, before we get into that topic, I want to go back up, because when we talk about long-term goals and that the goal of our goals is who we become, you have a section where you talk about prioritizing education and self-improvement. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's so important as part of this process?
I think that there's a role for both formal education for those who choose to do that, right? I mean, and not that you have to have it. It's not a prerequisite that one must have it. And some youth out there may not have the opportunity to have a formal post-high school education. But I think if you do have that opportunity, even as messed up as one could argue the formal educational system is in this country, that I think it does serve a purpose. And we can always learn having a formal education. But it doesn't stop there.
Right.
After your formal education, throughout your life, it is our responsibility, no one else's. It is our responsibility to self-educate.
Yes.
And anyone can do that, whether rich or poor, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can go to your local library, if nothing else, or if you have a little bit of money, you can subscribe to Audible, and there's just tons and tons of books that you can listen to while on the road. Or you can, go to your local bookstore or online and order a hard copy of a book. But the bottom line is, or like you were saying earlier, go to a seminar, a workshop, and have a live event where you have more interaction. But self-education is absolutely critical. And I see so many people out there who just get on their, day-to-day clock in and clock out at work, and then they come home, and of course, we all have personal and family responsibilities, and I get it. I mean, it can
Yeah.
be overwhelming with so many balls in the air that we're juggling.
Right.
But somehow we've got to make time to self-educate, to keep our brain expanding. Our brain is there's so much neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
even as we get older. I mean, certainly the majority of our neuroplasticity is as we're younger, right? When we're young, we can learn, if we wanted to, we could learn 5 languages by the time we're 20.
Right.
When you're 60, it's a little harder to learn 5 languages. It could be done, but it's a
Right.
little harder.
Yeah, you got to go
But
live in 5 different countries.
yeah, but there's still a certain level of neuroplasticity in our
Yes,
brain,
there is.
and I think that self-education is key. One of
Right.
the things, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in the book or not, but it's something I do tell my friends, that one of the small regrets, and I'm the sort of person, Gerald, that I tell my wife this all the time. Anytime she brings something up from the past that was not so good, or that I made a mistake, or she made a mistake, I always say, listen, stop having regrets over the past.
Right.
Focus on the current and on the future,
Yes.
but don't go back in the past. We can't change the past.
Exactly.
But one of my small regrets, if I were to go back, is I wish I had discovered the power of audiobooks much sooner in my life.
Yeah.
Because for 30 plus years, Gerald, I have an almost 1 hour commute, just one way to work.
Yeah.
That's 50 minutes going, 50 minutes coming back. And
That's
what
a
would
lot
I
of
be
listening.
doing? For years, I would just be listening to music, right? Which I
Right.
enjoyed. It would relax me, but I wasn't really benefiting other than that.
Right.
And so, the power of audiobooks, I think, is immense.
Yes.
And I didn't take advantage of that until, recent years. So self-education is key. And I would preach that every day, all day, till the cows come home.
Exactly. Because, it's kind of like compound interest, right? If you
Right.
invest the little money every month in, stocks or mutual funds or whatever, over a lifetime, it grows exponentially.
Yes.
Learning has the same impact.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great
And
analogy.
if you invest a little bit of learning time every day over your lifetime after high school or after college or whatever your formal education, quote unquote, is, if you take on the mindset of a lifelong learner, it's like the best investment you can make, which is in yourself. And it's like compound interest. So the capacity and the things that you will be able to do later on in life because of all this knowledge that you've gained and experience that you have will be exponential compared to if I just waited and read a book here and there.
Yes. Right? Oh my gosh. I mean, I am with you 1,000%. And again, I don't want to look back at my life and have regrets, but truly that is one of the things that I've been guilty of not doing consistently, because in my profession, most of us as physicians, we live in this box. We don't have that creative side of us. Most of us, I mean, there are some physicians who live outside the box, but I think the majority, the 95 percenters, which I was in for a very long time, we're trapped inside this box. We go to school, we go to medical school, we work our butt off, and we have to do residency. We work our butt off, and we're starting a practice. And whether we're joining a practice, or in my case, starting my own practice, we have no business training whatsoever in medical school. That's one of the downsides to medical school. So I never took a finance or accounting class or anything. So I'm learning through the school of hard knocks. And so my life is just so focused on my day-to-day treating patients, doing surgery, running a practice, that I really wasn't self-educating because I was just so engrossed in what I was doing for so many years. And so if I were to look back, that's one of the things that I would have taken what you just correctly stated, is that planting those little seeds for that compound interest and growing your mind from an early age, and try and reach that to our kids. Again, we'll see how much of that they take to heart. It's hard, when you're young and you're a teenager or you're 20 years old. I mean, you think you know everything. And you don't want to hear stuff from your parents. You think you know more than your parents do, and it's hard to embody what they're preaching to you. But I fully agree with you, Gerald.
Yeah, yeah. What I've learned with kids, because my kids are 30 and 33, is that a lot of things are caught more than they're taught. And so you have to just, as you're doing, continually set the example, set the bar high, and keep living your life the way you're living it and setting an example and providing for them the way you are. A lot of what you're saying, it may seem like they're not getting, but a lot of life is caught, not taught. Right. So they may not, they may go around and say, oh, I haven't heard that, blah, blah, blah. But then later on in life, they're like, okay, I remember seeing, or I remember, or we had these vacations, or we did this, and they will begin to recollect and remember and catch all of the lessons that you were teaching through the way you were living more than what you were saying.
Yes, and I keep hearing this from other individuals who have kids, and I believe you. And,
yeah, you got to trust it.
I pray to God that's true. Someday. Right now, I'm just not quite seeing that, so it scares me a little bit.
Yeah, you're in the middle of this. You're in the middle of this. You're on the rough side of the storm when it comes to teenagers and just them saying, "Hey, you got it all together, and I'm listening to you." That's not the way it goes. And I dealt with that with my kids when they were young too. So I want a couple more things I want to talk to you about before we land this plane, because I'm enjoying our conversation here. And there's a quote, and I'm going to share this quote in the context of this next topic, which is, what is the resilience paradox that you talk about? And I think it's around this area of managing failure or managing hardships or difficulties. There was an anonymous quote that you had in a book that really stood out to me, and it was, obstacles are not roadblocks. They are the stones we step on to reach the summit of delayed gratification. And it was by Anonymous. So the topic here is, what is the resilience paradox?
Yeah, so resilience, I think is, I define resilience as strength through adversity.
Okay.
Right? And so when you think of adversity, one would think on the surface that if you're facing adversity, you're in a position of weakness.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to me, when you hear the term adversity, it may have a negative connotation of weakness.
Right.
But the paradox to me is that really adversity provides the opportunity for strength, and that's what resilience is.
Yes.
It's strength through adversity by definition, right? When you're in a situation that creates adversity, you have to dig deep, kind of like what you were saying earlier, that you have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Yep.
And you have to be able to view the adversity not as what people refer to as a setback, but what I like to call a temporary step back. And then from that temporary step back, you then have to be able to not bounce back, but rather bounce forward.
Yes.
And that's where the strength comes in. So in my mind, that paradox is strength through adversity.
Yes.
So you're taking a situation where you may be viewed as a position of weakness, but in turn, you're flipping the script, you're flipping the paradigm to create strength, to have that resilience. And resilience is absolutely key in anything that we do in life, personally, professionally. We must be resilient. Almost like a rubber band, right? You get pulled to one end, but then boom, you once you let go of that rubber band, you then spring forward. So
exactly.
That is resilience.
Exactly. And I think resilience requires a couple of things, which is a growth mindset, because you also talk about that in your book. I think it's Angela Duckworth, when she talks about the growth mindset, she said that the elemental component of a growth mindset is this idea of grit, right? Being gritty, someone who you're in the fight, right? And you're just going to hold on, and you're just going to not let go, and you're going to conquer this. You're making your mind up that I'm going to overcome this no matter what, no matter how gritty or dirty or how challenging it gets. I'm going to overcome. But then the other thing that I thought about too, this is one of my sayings that I've started saying on a lot of my podcasts and just in discussions with people, is that you can learn your way out of anything. You can learn your way out of any difficulty. And you can learn by books, podcasts, seminars, free courses, finding the right expert who's been there, done that, who's been through some things, who can coach you or mentor you. And maybe that person's alive, maybe they've passed on, but there's a recording of them, or maybe there's a speech by them. And if you listen to it multiple times, you start hearing things that you hadn't heard before, where you're learning strategies to move forward in ways that you probably hadn't heard before. And I love the idea of not a setback, but a step back, right? And then Steve Harrison, who we know, again, he would always say, what, stumble forward, right? You know, right. When you're working on something, it's like, just don't even fall for it, just stumble for it. But at the end of the day, if you stumble or fall forward and you get up and you look back, guess what? You're a little bit further than you were the day before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Once again, couldn't agree with you more, Gerald. All fantastic concepts that really will provide exponential growth for each of us. And again, it goes back to that self-education.
Yes.
You gotta. I fully agree that you can learn your way through anything, but that's part of the self-education. You got to be willing to do it. You got to invest some time. I mean, nothing comes without a certain investment in time. It just doesn't happen magically. We've got to invest time and effort.
Exactly. Now, here's the last thing I want to ask you about, and it is the Cuban triad of unparalleled success.
Yes.
I couldn't let you get away without talking about that one, especially you being of Cuban descent and a refugee at 3 years old coming over to the country, and just the whole thing that you've gone through in your life. And again, I won't spill the whole thing, because we want people to go get your book, because again, The Power of Pauses is a really, really good book. I really enjoyed reading it. But the Cuban triad, you talk about self-discipline, perseverance, and then that delayed gratification. Why did you use that name? Just like, where did that come from?
Well, truly, it just came from, as I was writing the book, which came after that first TEDx talk, and I'm just reminiscing about my life and my upbringing.
Yeah.
And that triad that you correctly mentioned, the self-discipline, number 2 is kind of a combination of resilience and perseverance.
Yep.
And then number 3 is delayed gratification. That triad is not something that I was really consciously aware of throughout my life.
Yeah.
It's really now looking back in retrospect,
yep,
that as I look at my life and my journey and my failures and my obstacles and my successes, that I thought to myself, wow, these are the 3 main attributes that have really contributed to who I am today.
Yeah.
And being the fact that I'm a Cuban refugee, I thought to myself, hey, this is my Cuban triad. I mean, for you, Gerald, it might be your whatever your heritage or what have you, but to me, it's my Cuban triad. But then since I thought of that, and then I started thinking further, and I wrote my second TEDx talk. I really almost want to extend it to a triad plus, and that plus is the positive power of obsession, right?
Yeah.
And when we hear the term obsession, so often we think of it as a negative connotation. We think of a psychiatric illness or OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right.
But no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a paradigm shift in positive obsession, whereby anything that we do in life, anything, whether it's our marriage, our kids, our career, we have to be obsessed. And obsessed means to have passion.
Yes.
Passion for our goals and what we're trying to achieve. And using a stereotype, I know a lot of people don't like stereotypes. I kind of believe in stereotypes because they're there for a reason. And one of the stereotypes is being Cuban, is Cubans tend to be, let's call it, hot-blooded, passionate people.
Yeah.
And overall, most of the Cubans that I've met fit that stereotype. and I am one of them. My wife will tell you, she sees that obsessive nature in me all the time, because I am passionate about anything that I do. So really now it's more than a triad. I mean, what would be the term for a foursome?
A quartet.
A quartet, a Cuban quartet. And that would be adding obsession to the mix, because I think that's also critically important in any aspect of our life if we
Right.
want to be successful.
Exactly. So you call it either the Cuban Quartet or the Cuban Triad Plus, because everybody's adding plus now, which means it's some more stuff to it, but you got the foundation. Right. Exactly. Well, Dr. Emilio, where can people learn about you, find out about you, get your book, and look up information on you?
Well, probably the easiest way to do it would be through my personal website, Gerald. So
Sure.
Aside from our practice website, my personal website is dremiliojusto.com, and that's spelled DREMILIOJUSTO.com. And in that website, there are links to both TEDx talks. There's a link to Amazon for the book, even though the book is available through all major retailers, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, blah, blah, blah. But there's an Amazon link there. For those of you in the audience who enjoy audiobooks, I'm proud of the fact that I narrated the book myself, and it is on Audible. And that was an extraordinary experience. I loved every moment of narrating it. I think in a future career, I could be a book narrator. I really enjoyed that. And there's links to all sorts of previous podcasts where I've been a guest, tons of articles that I've been featured in. So it's a nice, robust website that I'm proud of. And also there's a contact page on that website. So if you fill in your name and email address and send me a question, a request, if anyone out there is looking for a keynote speaker, et cetera, that once you fill out that contact page, it'll come directly to me. And I'm very efficient at answering back. If not the same day, certainly within 24 hours, I will answer you back.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Emilio, this has been a pleasure of mine to have you on the show, for us to have this conversation. Again, I tell you I was going to read your book. I love the content. I love what you've done with it. I love the Cuban Triad and all the different concepts and things, because I learned a lot from it. And I know that those who are listening will learn a lot. And if they go get your book, they're going to learn even more. So thank you so much for taking the time to put down your thoughts on paper and get this printed and then share your wisdom, because the best investment any of us can make is in a book, because we're for a meal, cost of a meal, we can gain 5 to 10 years of somebody else's experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerald. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to let the audience know that really you're a fantastic individual. You're doing great things. Kudos to you and the work that you're doing. And I highly admire you. And I look forward to continuing our journey together in this conversation in another arena.
Excellent. Excellent. If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.